Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lou, and I like to research topics that interest me and turn that into video essays. If you like it, please subscribe, and if you don't like it, do not tell me because I will cry. All right, so we're starting today with part 3 on the issue of abstinence culture. And so today we're focusing on the topic of gender and sexuality issues in the making of one's personality in teenagehood. So if you're just stumbling onto this video out of the blue, if you're not a subscriber, I strongly advise you watch the first 2 parts of this whole piece, series, whatever you want to call it, and let's get started. So it is not breaking news that we live in a patriarchal society and that women are required to act a certain way according to religion, especially on the matter of sex. Like the most virtuous woman in the whole Catholic Christian religion gave birth to a baby without having sex. So that's the standards that women are held to. I mean, I'm kidding, but y'all get the idea. My point is, this is the unrealistic views young girls are being taught in the Bible Belt. Stay pure. They have the duty to protect their purity. So I asked a question to the previous people I interviewed for this essay. How would you describe the role of women in the South and compare it with the way your mom acts in her daily life? As a reminder, all of the people that I've interviewed are my friends, and they are all from the Bible Belt or the surrounding area. And they were all brought up super religious and went to church weekly. So I had an extensive discussion with Mary, and she had a lot to say. I quote, "Women in the South are taught that they are the moral gatekeepers. They bear the burden of the responsibility to not let a man tear their purity. This is a role that is changing, but the power of the Madonna-whore dichotomy remains strong, even outside the Catholic Church. The Protestant religions buried the Catholic Church for assigning Mary such importance. Catholics have the Hail Mary, but Protestant faiths have no similar prayer. A joke I heard when I was around 10 years old from a girl. She said, if you wanted to see the dentist, would you want to see him or his mother? Why would you pray to Mary and not to God himself? Still, if you believe in the word, that is the Bible, each and every version assigns Mary a virgin birth. How do you compete with a woman who gave birth to the Son of God without having sex? An ordinary woman, even one who has only fooled around and maybe not even gone all the way would, by any devout Christian standards, be deemed unpure. There are quite a few stereotypical visions of the women of the South, such as the fact that they always seem to be stay-at-home moms, waiting for the end of the day to reunite with their husbands. I asked Mary about her mom and how she lives, and she told me that, I quote, "She is, like many religious people, very kind of heart, but is unforgiving when it comes to certain behaviors not condoned by the church. For example, she doesn't think mothers should work, as they should be available for their children. When asked what families struggling financially should do if the mother's salary is needed for the family to make ends meet, she insists that the family has to make sacrifices. Easy to say when you're married to a professional who makes a very good living. She has volunteered for years at a pro-life clinic, counseling women who are considering abortion to not go through with it. Though she didn't admit it to me directly, I know that she voted for Trump in the last presidential election, and this because he claimed to be pro-life and Hillary was clearly pro-choice. Moreover, guilt was a terribly powerful weapon in our household, and Catholics are renowned for wielding the weight of institutional rules in order to obtain what they want as individuals. This was even a tool used by the administration of my high school, the teachers, the nun who was the principal, and all of her staff. The issue is that the people that believe in the abstinence-only program deeply think that women are in charge to save morality. Us women are expected to be the calm, romantic, docile ones, and we're not allowed to make a mistake when it comes to religion especially. A guy having sex outside of marriage will get away with it, and will even be praised by his friends. But a girl, she will be shamed, regarded as a slut, and will be excluded of the community in some way. Isn't that unfair? I remember in high school, there was this doodle in the bathroom that wrote, "Why do you care so much about my genitals?" Having matured now, I completely understand what this meant. For this part, my friend Andrew mainly discussed the matter of dress codes in high schools of the Bible Belt. He agrees with Mary that girls are the moral gatekeepers. He noted that, and I quote, Rather than teaching boys to be respectful towards girls, they teach girls to change. Girls were often sent to the office because of a skirt too short or a tank top deemed too revealing. They were often asked to go home and change. Boys were not affected by the dress code. In the Bible Belt and in general, dress codes are mostly aimed at girls. There are many examples of dress codes being discussed in the media, and they are more and more labeled as problematic in the United States in general. Dress codes include very detailed rules. Because I remember in my high school in France, sure, you can come with like a spaghetti strap top and like mini shorts, but it was not that extreme. It was sexist, don't get me wrong, but it was not that extreme. So I took the example of 4 high schools in Texas, and the lists just go on for pages upon pages upon pages. And they are mainly targeting feminine wear, such as skirts, cleavage, dresses. My friend Andrew remembers being taught the phrase, boys will be boys. Basically, the man or the boy, because literally a teenage boy is a boy, he's not a man, but the boys are left to their instincts and girls have to tame them, accommodate them. I'm not even going to discuss the creepy old men in high schools, like teachers, staff in general. During my research on dress codes, I stumbled upon this blog by a teenage girl from Texas named Anna. Her username is pretty explicit. It's BibleBeltFeminist.com. Her articles deal with the weight of being a woman in the South, and in one article in particular, she talks about her experience with dress codes in high school. In her article called Dress Coded, she writes that she was once pointed out in class because she was wearing a skirt that was apparently a few inches too short, and the thing that made her the most angry is that the teacher was willing to use up class time to tell on her. She says in her article, and I quote, "The teacher used up class time that could have otherwise been spent learning." She then remembers what her teacher told her after class, and I quote, trigger warning, really gross, "You are precious like a diamond, and we cover diamonds to keep them safe. In the same way, you must be covered. If boys see you, you will give them the wrong idea. They will have a reaction to your body, a feeling, and you will cause them to sin. We must be covered. What is beautiful, we cover. We keep safe. We are daughters of God." Leave them girls alone. Damn. So yeah, women and teenage girls are targeted for what they wear because they might be tempting to boys and drive them to temptation. Anna makes it very clear in her article that girls are constantly persecuted for what they wear, so much that it almost feels like it's more important than their education. I later had the opportunity to interview Anna, and she said some really interesting stuff. I quote, "The information we get in health class is biased and isn't meant to educate. I am angry at the misogyny, the sexism, and the latent homophobia in this part of the country. Most men see women as childbearers and wives before they see them as people. The large part of this oppression comes from religion, which is, in my opinion, a patriarchal construct. To have power over women, we are controlled through religion and sex. Women are expected to look pretty, but not to be sexual. And in that, teachers are not doing their job in education. People like to figure out what girls are before they do it themselves. I got into feminist activism through a group at my school. I want to change the way people think, to show them that feminism is not a slur, not a derogatory term like it has become. So the blame is automatically put on women. Marie, my friend that I interviewed, confirmed that about the dress code and teen pregnancy, which is really up. So her school provided a uniform, but it was specifically forbidden for them to tie the cardigan around their waist, as it would hide a possible pregnancy. Marie says, and I quote, "When a girl got pregnant in high school, she immediately was expelled. Oftentimes, this girl's family was poor. However, the wealthy girls that got pregnant would get an abortion and pretended like it never happened. When a girl got pregnant, it was all her fault. The boy never got in trouble, for he would never admit being the father. They were not slut-shamed the way the girls were. So being more virtuous or simply knowing how to hide it was more instinctual for girls. Social pressure took care of making sure that that girls persevere their good girl reputation. Marie thinks that the mix of Republican, conservative, and religion can never be a healthy mix for women's rights, especially not in the Bible Belt. But at the same time, there is a contradiction as to the role of women in the South. As explained before, they are to be modest, pure, virtuous, but they're also expected to be cute, sexy, and attractive. That image of a beautiful and sexy woman does not come from the Bible Belt, but is conveyed by Hollywood and the media, the women's press, and thus it contributes to the result of a society based on good looks in the Western world. But that's not new. My real question is, how can this sexy, attractive, blonde, big boobs women cohabit with a very religious background? In the Bible Belt, just like everywhere else in the world, standards exist. But in this part of the US, and especially for young women, there is a clash. They are encouraged to look pretty and feminine, to be sexy, but at the same time, they are forbidden to have a sexual life. In the early/mid 2000s, there was a campaign that perfectly embodied that notion. It was organized by Candy's Foundation, created in 2001 by Neil Cole. He was the head of the fashion brand Candy's. His mission was to prevent the risk of teen pregnancy by advocating for abstinence in his ads. He had absolutely fucking ludicrous mottos like abstinence the sexy way. The one I thought faithfully illustrated my point was a campaign advertised on t-shirts that read, "Be sexy, it doesn't mean you have to have sex." The t-shirt was designed to be super fashionable and appealing to young girls with pink bedazzled letters, and were worn and promoted by very popular singers and actresses at the time, such as Mila Kunis, Vanessa Carlton. But yeah, so as we can see in this montage, the girls wearing the campaign shirt are posing with a lot of makeup and model-like sexy poses. So how can you be sexy and ensure modesty at the same time? It is realistically impossible. It is beyond me that this campaign was brought to teenage girls as a feminist motto, as it gives them the illusion that they are making their own choice and transgressing the rules just enough to be a little bit provocative in the view of their parents' beliefs. Going back to the abstinence-only program now. Everyone I interviewed told me that the abstinence-only classes were not mixed. It was boys class, girls class. So I asked both Rhett and Mary to tell me what was going on in those classes, because boy, girls, we're taught different things, right? So when I looked at what Rhett told me, I thought it was more aimed at the mechanical side of sex, if that makes any fucking sense, like very physiological, anatomy-ish, science-y, you know, like for boys, with pictures of STIs and STDs. But Mary's classes, as a girl, much more profound than that. Marie told me that in her class, in the girls' class, the word sex was banned. So they used another word, fornicate. I quote, "Of course, it is a very violent word, and girls tend to be repelled at what is violent. It linked having sex to being a wild animal. No girl wants to be an animal. We were also taught that girls were naturally born more virtuous, because supposedly our hormones were weaker than the boys." So it is clear that women are given many rules to follow and many goals to reach in the Bible Belt. They are held to higher standards than men. But some women believe that women in general don't need those modern philosophies, and that the way God created things has to stay that way. Y'all, I'm about to talk about Girl Defined. Girl Defined on YouTube is a series of videos by two sisters from the South. Y'all know the stitch. They're preaching a modest way of life. They're trying to live their lives in a God-honoring way, which, okay. But they bring down any girl that will not agree with their beliefs, basically. Yeah, they're just pushing away anything that has to do with feminism. I mean, it's a hard watch. It's a hard watch. I think personally that their discourse is dangerous. because they don't take into account any other way of living than theirs. It's very closed-minded. Anyways, moving on. Okay, so my next subpart is going to be LGBTQIA+, between a blank spot and a subject of persecution in the Bible Belt. To start strong, okay, I'm laughing, but like, this is a hard part. So to make it clear, the LGBTQIA+ people are just invisibilized in the Bible Belt. They're just never talked about in the scope of the abstinence only program and in general. And if they are talked about, it's not good. They are a taboo subject. My friend Andrew, who is a gay man, seconds me on that. It's pretty simple, he told me. They did not talk about it. They completely ignored the fact that someone could be gay. At least at my school, they were too religious. The only times I would hear about it, it was on TV, and I would only hear that it was unnatural and that it was a disease. I did know back then that I was not attracted to girls, but I didn't think about it that much. I didn't think I was sick, so I didn't think I was gay. I was comparing myself to other guys, and I understood. I was sure I didn't fit into basic gender roles. It did prevent me from appreciating it where I was. I was very well liked by everyone, but it was a don't ask, don't tell thing. My friend Robert has a very painful experience with his coming out story. So Robert's father was the deputy head of the private Catholic high school where he went to in Virginia. And he eventually got kicked out by the principal because the principal had proof that Robert was gay. They accused him of being a sinner and to be perverted. They did not want him in the school, so he transferred to a public high school. And Robert's dad lost his position as deputy head 6 months later because of his son's reputation. So both Andrew and Robert came out around age 15 to their families, but it was a long and delicate process. It was easier for Andrew because he told me that his mom was not as religious, and his father was a pretty moderate Christian. Robert told me that he hesitated a long time. He had originally planned on coming out around age 18 because then he could leave his family, but it happened differently. He needed to admit it and come out earlier because psychologically he could not take the shame and guilt anymore. So basically, Robert was a victim of intolerance. He was denied access to education because he was gay. Persecution and bullying pushed gay people to keep their sexuality a secret. It is stated that the abstinence-only sex education discriminates against lesbian, bisexual, gay, and transgender teens. The program aims to teach kids that homosexuality is deviant, immoral, and that it goes against the Bible. This has resulted in many cases of suicides among the LGBTQIA+ community in the Bible Belt. Dr. Hassan Bueller, who published a study in pediatrics on the risk of teen suicide for the teens that are members of the LGBTQIA+ community, came up with these results. 19% risk for LGBTQIA teens in the Northeast, 25% in the Midwest, 21% in the West, and a staggering 35% risk in the Bible Belt. In his work, the doctor wants to show that non-accepting communities, families, school personnel are associated with an elevated risk for suicide attempts. There was a ray of hope in 2003 when the U.S. Supreme Court decriminalized homosexual acts between consenting adults, striking Texas law banning gay sex. But this ray of hope was short-lived, as other states of the Bible Belt responded with 10 anti-gay bills in 2004, such as a ban on gay marriage and out-of-state adoptions for same-sex couples. I feel like we need to talk about conversion therapy, also known as reparative therapy sometimes. I came across this organization called Exodus Global Alliance based out of Orlando, Florida, that specializes in the cure for homosexuals. On the homepage of their website, we can read, proclaiming that faith in Christ and a transformed life is possible for the homosexual through the transforming power of Jesus Christ, equipping Christians and churches to uphold the biblical view of sexuality but respond with compassion and grace to those affected by homosexuality. serving people affected by homosexuality through Christian fellowship, discipleship, counseling, support groups, and other services. We understand as we read this description that gay people are people that need to be saved by religion. Also, the use of the expression "those affected by homosexuality" leads to believe that homosexuality is a disease, an illness that needs to be cured. People who host this program take on the role of nurses, and the gay people or the people member of the LGBTQIA community present there are the sick patients, the helpless patients. Usually the people undergoing this kind of program are being told that heterosexuality is to be praised as a norm to achieve a good mental health. The program in practice is to teach abstinence to LGBTQIA plus people and to strengthen their sense of masculinity for men, biological men, and of femininity for biological women. It is taught that it is better to be in a heterosexual marriage and refrain from homosexual desires. Also, I don't think I need to point it out, but like the overlap of sex and gender. Anyways, Exodus Global Alliance does not hesitate to praise and put under the spotlight the success of their actions. They're showing off people that underwent the program and that were cured thanks to their services. We also see public gatherings and testimonies on stage, TED Talks style, about the effectiveness of the program, as if heterosexuality was a prize to be won and earned through hard work. The newly straight people have a movement, and it's called the ex-gay movement. It is a complex thing to understand or fathom for me, as those ex-gays do not identify as gay or anything else on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, but they generally do not identify as heterosexual either. Their discourse usually revolves around the fact that they have eliminated their attraction to the same sex, or say that they simply abstain from gay sex. It was hard for me to discern while doing my research whether they felt like their status was positive or negative. It's highly possible that a lot of those ex-gays prefer to say that they feel good now as ex-gays because they're just fed up with being judged negatively by their community. But anyways, I can't speak for them. But what is sure is that the ex-gay movement is split into two opposite sides: those who accept their new life and those who believe that what they went through was humanly unacceptable. That latter group named themselves the ex-gays survivors, or Beyond Ex-Gay. While doing my research, I found this conference that took place outside of Irvine, California in 2007 called the Ex-Gay Survivors Conference, that dealt with undoing the damage and affirming our lives together. Their goal was to raise awareness and expose the harm done in those conversion sessions. Exodus Global Alliance was dismantled in 2013 when Alan Chambers, the executive director, against all odds, apologized in an hour-long talk in Kansas City to LGBTQIA plus people for, and I quote, "years of undue suffering and judgment at the hands of the organization." He also came out as bisexual and added that, I quote, "For quite some time, we've been imprisoned in a worldview that's neither honoring towards our fellow human beings nor biblical. We want to see bridges. We want peace to be at the forefront of anything we do in the future." I mean, good for him. This organization was dismantled, but there are still some that are up and running right now in 2022. All right, so after having discussed the religious culture and the abstinence-only program applied in the South, it seems relevant to wonder what it feels like to leave the Bible Belt for another part of the world or another state, and how people come to question the education they have been given. But can you judge your own culture? Are you in a place to have insight on the culture that you were raised in? In order to do that, you would have to distance yourself physically from the place you were raised in, because it is really hard to be critical of your own culture. Leaving a very conservative part of the US for a more liberal one can result in some kind of a culture shock. During my research, I encountered some people from the South mentioning how left behind they felt when they left the Bible Belt. In a documentary called The Virgin Daughters from 2008 by Jane Trees, Jessica, a previous member of the purity movement, now 27 years old, declares that, I quote, "Purity was very much a concept that I grew up with. Giving my purity to my father was very weird to me. But then when I hit reality in the real world, it was such a shock and such a harsh learning curve at that point. Now I feel like I am at least 6 years behind on life." Interestingly enough, Jessica's story is one of a woman who has put her past and her upbringing into perspective. Judging by the statement quoted before, she had vowed to be pure and to follow the rules through religion. But she tells us that when she got pregnant, it triggered a reaction in her. She started to put the values she was taught into question. Even though abortion was never an option for her, her teen pregnancy allowed her to take a step back and defy her parents' decision, which was to marry the man that made her pregnant. When she refused, she felt like a whole new world was unraveling in front of her, and she decided to move out of state. To this day, she is still a religious person, but more moderate, and she refuses to push religion onto her children. So what is it like to start over with new beliefs? Everyone that I interviewed in the scope of this essay expressed some kind of relief in leaving the South. Andrew's main reason for moving out was the lack of knowledge and education on LGBTQIA plus matters, and so he decided to move to France. He said the following: "I noticed French men cared about their appearance. It's considered girly in the States. There was also a no homo effect in the South. There is a very strict group of code boy to boy, always very rough, never kiss your friend, never put your hand on their shoulder. There is more proximity between men in France. I realized it when I first came to France for a gap year after graduating high school, and at the same time I realized it was not an illness and that normal people can be gay too. I came out to my parents a year later when I came back to Salem, Virginia, and at first they were kind of put off. Eventually they accepted me as I am, and I am so grateful for their open-mindedness." So yeah, Andrew needed to physically leave the Bible Belt to understand that being gay is okay, and it gave him the strength to come out to his family. He adds, "I was always sort of made fun of because I was not masculine enough. I was the girly boy. People would ask me if I was a boy or a girl. Young people are being pushed to act a certain way from a very young age. French people would say that France is less sexually open than the US, and it was always shocking to me. I felt repressed in my gayness in the US. France liberated me. My growing up environment pushed me to stay in France because I feel comfortable in my identity in France." Similarly, Robert, who also moved to France as a gay man, told me, "People didn't care as much about my sexuality in France. Even the religious people are more open-minded. They respect my private life. Americans make no difference between private and public life. I felt late, education-wise, because of censorship in my Christian school. We weren't taught evolution. We were taught that God made our body function a certain way. Everything that we learned was in a Bible spectrum. I did notice a difference with Ohio education, where we talked about sex, contraception in an explicit way, because he attended middle school in Ohio. Christian school made a disservice. It doesn't prepare for the real world. Statistics show that creationism is still taught in American high schools, and especially in the Bible Belt. Louisiana, since the Louisiana Science Education Act of 2008, and Tennessee, since the Senate Bill 893 of 2012, are permitting creationist instruction in public schools in order to discuss science subjects that can spark controversy. For example, creationism, global warming, and Texas is also teaching the creationist curriculum. It is crazy to me that high schools are dispensing pseudoscience classes based on no facts, just based on religion. And it baffles me even more that science can be just considered as an opinion. Like, science is factual by definition. Like, denying the theory of evolution and teaching inaccurate or unproven knowledge to kids is highly questionable and will have consequences on their respective futures. Bible Belt religious education keeps the kids in a bubble of illusions. They are part of this weird, I can't say weird because I don't want to judge, but like, I can't be objective here. They're a part of a fantasy-like world designed to keep family values and traditions alive. They are raised to believe that what they are taught is the single truth, the only truth. There is a study discussing the psychology of children that are raised in very religious households by a researcher. She is called Annie Waldman, and she wrote this article in 2014. The article is called "Religious Children Are Less Able to Distinguish Fantasy from Reality." So they took 66 children, some atheist, some religious, and they presented them with three kinds of stories: realistic, fantasy, religious, and the result was the following. Every child, regardless of their religion, could tell that the fantasy story was fiction. But when it came to telling realistic stories and religious stories, it was much harder to religious children to tell what was true and what was made up. They thought religious stories were true. As the Bible presents its characters as historical, lines between reality and fiction are blurred to them. What shocked Rhett the most when he moved to Southern California was the fact that people are open about being atheists. Being an atheist in the Bible Belt is a daring move. But yeah, when Bible Belt outcasts come together, they conduct actions in the Bible Belt through activism. For instance, Americans United for Separation of Church and State campaign in those words. Religious freedom is about fairness. We don't treat people differently because their beliefs are different from our own. We are lawyers, lobbyists, students, activists, religious leaders, and impassioned Americans. We are people of faith and people who don't profess any particular faith. We are a community that includes and welcomes people of all genders, races, ethnicities, religions or beliefs, sexual orientations, ages, classes, and abilities. They advocate for people to make their own choices and to avoid any peer pressure into religion. They are based in Alabama and Texas, and they organize marches for rights, educational conferences, and take action within public schools in the Bible Belt. Some activist groups have a more provocative-based agenda. During Christmas holidays, they create a billboard that is plastered in Bible Belt's major cities such as Memphis, Nashville, St. Louis, or Fort Smith. In 2014, it pictured a little girl writing her letter to Santa with the following caption: "Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas is to skip church. I'm too old for fairy tales." And in 2015, it was a smiling Santa saying, "Go ahead and skip church. Just be good for goodness sake. Happy holidays." So the authors of these campaigns are the members of the American Atheist Group. And this organization has been up and going since 1963 to protect the absolute separation of religion from government. One of their main causes is also fighting against the abstinence-only program. They say that, I quote, "Medically inaccurate materials are still the norm in far too many of America's public schools. According to the Reproductive Health Policy Group, the Gut Matcher Institute, despite evidence indicating that adolescents who intend to practice abstinence fail to actually do so, and they often fail to use condoms or other forms of contraception when they do have intercourse, and that the abstinence-only program is not effective at preventing pregnancy or STDs, nor do they have a positive impact on age at first sexual intercourse, number of sexual partners, or other behavior. The United States has spent more than $2 billion on the abstinence-only until marriage program in the last 20 years. And as of recently, like in the past 10 years, they've extended their actions to social media. To conclude on this part, it is possible to question your own education, and it is possible for Southerners to realize that they've been taught weird shit, basically. But because the traditions are deeply rooted, it takes a longer time to realize and catch up with the education of other parts of the US and the world. All right, so that was the end of part 3. That was the end of my series on abstinence-only culture. Actually, I lied. This is not the last part. Okay, so I interviewed a friend that was born and raised in Texas, and it's going to be like a bonus video on abstinence culture. So that was like the last part of the like theory part of this theme. But yeah, I'm interviewing my friend Jacqueline, and the video should be up like I would say first week-ish of December. Thank you. Bye, kissies. And I'm just going to conclude by saying, for those teenagers that are still in the South, that are still being taught the abstinence-only program, it is really important that, I don't know if you're watching me right now, but if you are, keep educating yourself on the internet. Keep watching those sex-positive TikToks. Keep reading those articles about the LGBTQIA community. It is really important that since the adults in your communities don't educate you properly, you have to do that yourself, which is really sad, but things need to change. Anyways, it's the end of the video. Thank you for watching. If you watched, if you liked it, please subscribe. And if you didn't like it, please do not tell me because I will cry. Okay, bye. I'll see you next time.